Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. I was just looking through this amazing 8th grade curriculum, and it asks such a great question. Have you ever wondered what actually happens to a forest after a massive fire? Or what happens to the bare, scraped earth after a giant glacier melts away? At first glance, you might think those places are just ruined forever, gone. But nature actually hides a fantastic secret. It acts as this master architect, totally equipped to heal itself from the ground up. So let's uncover the fascinating mystery of how life literally always finds a way to return.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty science of how this happens, the source material reminds us that God invites us to pay incredibly close attention to His creation. Take this beautiful scripture from Luke, for example. Consider the lilies, how they grow. Why does it say that? Well, because ecosystems are alive and changing, just like we are. Nature isn't just some static painting hanging on a wall. It's a dynamic, breathing system. When we study the lilies, the forests, and the land, we are literally observing God's blueprint for growth, resilience, and recovery in action.
Section 1. Nature's amazing healing power. Ecosystems are alive and changing.
Think about it like this. What happens when you get a deep scratch on your arm? Your body doesn't just stay broken, right? It immediately goes to work. A scab forms, new skin cells generate, and eventually the whole wound is healed. Well, the Earth does the exact same thing through something called ecological succession. So the crucial point is, this is the step-by-step process by which nature rebuilds, adapts, and ultimately flourishes over time to heal ecosystems. And this isn't just some abstract theory you only read about in textbooks. This is a real-world reality happening right now in scorching deserts, dense rainforests, and wide-open prairies. Everywhere around the globe, succession is nature's way of hitting the reset button.
Moving on to Section 2. Starting from bare rock. Primary succession.
Imagine trying to build a brand new house, but you don't even have a plot of dirt yet. You just have a solid slab of concrete. Primary succession is the ultimate fresh start. It happens in places where there is absolutely zero soil, just lifeless, bare stone. You might actually spot this at an abandoned construction site or maybe a rocky beach. And the absolute heroes of this stage? Lichens. I didn't realize this, but lichens literally secrete weak acids that break solid stone into dirt over time. I mean, how wild is that? As they grow and die, they break down the hard stone, grain by grain, into usable soil. And once that tiny layer of soil exists, small plants can finally take root. As those plants grow and die, they add more nutrients to the dirt, which paves the way for larger plants and eventually the return of animals. It's like a giant puzzle coming together piece by piece. Next up, Section 3. Healing the Earth's Scars. Secondary succession.
So if primary succession is building totally from scratch, secondary succession is kind of like remodeling a room where the foundation, the soil, is already completely intact. Imagine taking a mental hike with me right now. You're walking through a dense, shadowy forest. Suddenly, you come across a clearing where a massive old tree has fallen over in a storm. What happens next? Because that giant tree is gone, sunlight suddenly floods down to the forest floor, and almost immediately, seeds that have just been lying dormant in that nutrient-rich soil seize the opportunity. Grasses, weeds, and small bushes rapidly sprint up to fill that space. Nature's basically rushing to throw a bandage over the gap in the forest canopy to heal the space.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between our two types of recovery side by side. Primary succession starts on bare rock with absolutely no soil. It's a very slow process relying on those lichens to literally create the dirt. Secondary succession, on the other hand, happens where soil already exists, allowing grasses and small plants to arrive super quickly and heal the space much faster. Understanding this comparison helps us perfectly grasp the what and how of nature's recovery timelines. Section 4. Real-world ecosystem comebacks. Stories of survival and return.
Nature has authored some of the most epic comeback stories in history. When we look at areas of massive devastation, it's really easy to lose hope. But let's look at Glacier Bay, Alaska. At year 0, massive, freezing glaciers retreat and scrape the earth completely clean, leaving nothing but bare rock behind. It's just a frozen wasteland. But nature is so patient. Wait a few decades, and lichens colonize that stone. Fast forward a few centuries, wow, that completely scraped, lifeless rock has totally transformed into a towering, thriving spruce forest. It is an absolute masterpiece of patient rebuilding.
And then, of course, we have the legendary Mount St. Helens. In 1980, a devastating volcanic eruption just obliterated the landscape, burying the Earth in deep, suffocating ash. Honestly, it looked like the surface of the moon. But just a few years later, a beautiful purple plant called the lupane pushed its way right through the ash. They started fixing nutrients back into the ground. Decades later, insects returned to the blooming plants, and today, large animals like elk are thriving out there again. It's this incredible micro-narrative of nature's heroic resilience. The blast was catastrophic for sure, but the comeback was truly unstoppable.
Now, we usually think of human activity as destructive to nature, right? But actually, we can be a really positive part of this story. We can actively assist in secondary succession. Just look at how we revamp city parks. Step 1, we identify a concrete scar, something like an old abandoned parking lot. Step 2, we actively remove the asphalt to expose the ground beneath. Step 3, we allow that soil to breathe, to recover, and we plant greenery. And the result? A thriving new park for the community. We can absolutely participate in God's blueprint to bring life back to our cities. Section 5. Your role in succession. Observing your local area.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it reminds us science isn't just something that happens way up in Alaska or on the side of a volcano. It's literally happening outside your front door right now. The source material challenges us to be ecological detectives. I highly encourage you to go outside and see if you can find signs of secondary succession nearby. Maybe it's an overgrown empty lot or just a fallen tree branch. Think critically about human impact, the heavy lifting of those amazing lichens, and how you personally can help damaged ecosystems recover. Write these down and really reflect on them.
Section 6. Smart Minds, Peaceful Hearts. The HeroesmartAcademy Philosophy.
So, we've spent this explainer looking outward at physical forests, observing how a strong foundation is absolutely required for an ecosystem to heal. But now, let's take a second to look inward at two completely different paths for ourselves. On the left, education without morality. Think about it. What is the point of being highly intelligent and supposedly educated if you just continue to make bad choices that hurt yourself and others? It's kind of like having a forest full of towering trees, but with completely rotten roots. Eventually, the whole thing crashes down. On the right, we see the godly learner's approach, intertwining biblical morality with education. We set moral boundaries to prevent hurt. We build a strong spiritual soil so that our knowledge grows into something healthy and life-giving.
This brings us to a really beautiful promise found in Romans 8:6-7. The scripture promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. When we align our education with godly morality, we don't just gain a bunch of facts, we gain actual peace. And this isn't just theory, it is our genuine experience as we engage with this content and with our faith. True education heals the mind, exactly the same way succession heals the earth.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to consider. If nature, from bare rock to a blasted volcano, can patiently heal its deepest scars through God's blueprint of succession, what kind of moral foundation are you actively building right now to bring lasting peace to your own life? Think about your roots, think about your soil, and keep learning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.